So hello and thanks for joining the webinar. Yeah, let's just wait a minute for everyone to join. Yeah, while we are waiting, just as a short question for you. So where are you joining this webinar from? So I'm calling from Zagreb, from Croatia. How about you? Where are you watching from? Just to see how far this webinar is heard. So if you can send me or just message through Slack just to get a feeling of where the people are joining from. And while I'm waiting for your answers, just a couple of notes. So first of all, we are recording this webinar. You'll be able to watch it basically from the same page where you registered. And this is, we will publish this recording very soon afterwards. And you'll also be able to download the presentation deck for this webinar. After the webinar, we'll publish this presentation deck, and at the end of the webinar, I'll explain you how to access this presentation deck. Okay, so I see lots of people saying, okay, UK, San Francisco, UK, Kansas, USA, South Africa, great. Okay, let me see. Also here. Okay, good. So people from all over the world. Okay, Stockholm. Great, thank you. Okay, good to hear that people are listening to this webinar from all over the place. Okay, some more. Let me see. Okay, very well. Great. So let's start now. So welcome to the webinar called the certification process for ISO 27001 and for ISO 22301. My name is 𝗂𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀𝗁 and I'm the main ISO 27001 NIS2 and 𝘂𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀 expert at 𝘹𝗲𝗿𝗏. And 𝘹𝗲𝗿𝗏 is a company that makes compliance easy to understand and simple to use. And this webinar today is streamed through Zoom, but also through LinkedIn live events and through YouTube Live. And it will take approximately 50 or 60 minutes. This depends really on the number of questions that I'll receive. And by all means, feel free to ask, all questions that you want, and I'll try to answer them during the webinar, so during my presentation. And the remaining questions I'll answer in the Q&A session, which will come at the end of the webinar. So feel free to ask, and it's going to be a much more interesting webinar if you ask questions, and it will make it easier also for me to kind of make it a more interactive webinar. Very well. Let me now move on to the next slide. So basically, why is this certification important? Well, basically it's because it's most companies don't realize that this certification audit is a very hands-on activity from the certification body. And the certification auditor really checks each and every document that you have created. But not only this, he or she will be checking each and every security activity that you are doing. And basically they will map it towards each and every control and each and every clause from the standard. So it's very hands-on. It's not only about reading documents and basically looking at your documents. It's much more about what you are really doing in the company when it comes to security. And of course, I'll explain you during the webinar how it looks like. But for you, it's important to realize that this is not, I would say, trivial. It's something that you have to prepare for. And of course, this is what I'll explain exactly during the webinar. Good. So one of the main points, I'll explain these three main stages in the certification process during the webinar, and for each of these stages I'll explain how this is done and what the auditor will be expecting. And basically this webinar is for any company that goes for the certification for the first time. If you've never done this, then this is the webinar for you. So I'll explain all of these topics in a very easy to understand language, so that you can do this much more easily after you watch this webinar. Good. Now yeah, let me go further. I see some other people joining the webinar from Kenya, from Canada. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing this. Good. Now, let me move forward. So one of the main points with this certification audit is that you'll actually have the greatest benefit of the certification if you're actually approaching it from the positive side. When I was working as an auditor, I very often saw, how these auditees, I mean, so the companies going for the certification, how they were nervous, and how, they were trying to hide things from me. And, this is not, I mean, I understand why they were doing this, but basically the biggest benefit of the audit that you can get actually from the audit is that you can actually openly discuss with the auditor everything that you are doing, because as I'll show you later on during the webinar, this is the best way to get something positive out of the certification audit. So the main point here is really, try to approach this whole certification audit from the positive side, and then you'll get real benefits from the audit, not just the certificate, but also some, I would say, significant improvements to your security. And again, I'll explain this during the during the presentation today. Okay, so let's move on to the agenda. And by the way, let me know through chat which of these topics you find the most interesting, and this will give me an idea on which topics I should focus on during the presentation. So, just, as I go through these items, let me know which of these would you like which are you interested in the most, because these are then the topics that I'll spend most of the time during the webinar. Okay, so first I'll go briefly through and tell you about the certification bodies, how they work, also what are the 3 steps in the certification process, or the 3 stages, then also how to deal with nonconformities. So basically nonconformities is what the auditor has found was not properly done in your company, what to expect from auditors, what not to expect from auditors, so these things, just on how to approach them. When is your company ready for the certification? And I'll also go through some biggest challenges of typically that companies, what they are afraid of when they actually go for certification. So let me see if there is any feedback on what you would like to, what you would like me to focus on. Okay, if not, yeah, I'll definitely go through this whole agenda. So, okay, let me then go for this first item here. First, the item on the agenda, and this is about certification bodies. So, first of all, you have to know that certification bodies are, well, organizations that need to be licensed, meaning they have to be accredited by an accreditation body. Okay. So it's not like any company can become a certification body, you have to be licensed. And this license is issued by these national accreditation bodies, so these are government bodies. So for example, in United Kingdom, this is UCAS, right? United Kingdom Accreditation Service. So each country has their own accreditation body. So basically, you should take a look at if the company, if your potential certification body, if it has accreditation. So it's crucially important because if there is no accreditation, then basically it means that the certificate that they would issue to you is worthless. So accreditation, very important. Okay, second question is, how to choose a certification body. Basically, of course, you will take a look at the price, but the price is usually not the only thing that you should discuss with them. They usually offer some other things. There might offer some training as part of this certification price. You should also take a look at the experience of their certification auditor, and if this auditor has really experience in your particular industry. So let's say that you are, I don't know, that you are, I don't know, IT software development company, and if their auditor has never worked with software development companies, you might actually choose another certification body because, you don't want to have an auditor that never actually worked and never audited a company like yours. So it's important to have, I would say, not only the accreditation but also the price, and this experienced auditors is, I would say, the most important criteria for choosing them. Of course, if you are planning to go for several standards, like let's say both 27001 and 22301, by the way, 27001 is cybersecurity standard, 22301 is business continuity. If you go for both of these, then you have to check if the certification body has the auditors and the accreditation for both of these standards. Okay, very well. Now, with regards to the cost of certification, there is no, I would say, unique cost. The cost depends on the size of the company. The cost depends on the location in which country you're located. Also, if you are already certified against some other standard. And we'll share with you now the link to this ISO 27000 certification cost calculator. So when you open this link, you will see a free calculator where you can actually enter this information, location, size, and some other short information, and then you will be able to calculate the price of your certification. It's pretty good. It works pretty good, pretty precise, and of course you will see also a form at the end of at the end of that page where you will be able to actually get an official quote from a certification body. Okay, in any case, so if you're attending this webinar through Zoom and through YouTube, then you will be able to click this link and it will open right away in your browser. If you actually are joining this webinar through LinkedIn, then you will also see in the comments in the chat this link, but you will not be able to click it because of some limitations in LinkedIn. So the workaround there is simply to copy this URL and paste it into your browser, and then you will be able to open this link. Okay, very well. So this is around cost. Now, also one fact about certification is that it's not mandatory. So no one tells you that you have to go for a certification if you're implementing a standard. So basically, this is your business decision if you want to go, if your company does want to go for certification. And this really depends, on several things. But basically, the top management has to decide if there is enough benefit to go for this certification or not. From my experience working with lots of companies, I would say at least 90%, so 9 out of 10 companies do go for certification because they want to prove to their let's say buyers, to let's say general audience, that they are secure if they go for 27001 and that they're resilient if they go for 22301. Okay, let me see if there are any questions coming in. Okay, yeah, so if you open the chat window, you will see these links for this certification cost calculator. Okay, anyway, now let's go for this 3 stages or 3 steps in the certification process. So basically the first stage is so-called document review. And this stage of the certification means that the auditor will come to your company and actually review all of your documents, all of your policies and procedures, but also some mandatory records, just to see if they are compliant with the standard. So this, I would say, document review, stage 1 audit, it's I would say much easier than the stage 2 audit, because in this audit, in this stage 1 audit, this is where the certification auditor only goes again through the documentation, and writing documents is not as hard. I'll show you why this stage 2 is much harder. But again, writing all the policies and procedures and making sure that they are compliant with the standard, this is usually an easier part of the job. Now, when you go for this stage 2 audit, which actually comes usually 2 weeks or let's say 3-4 weeks after the stage 1 audit, this is where the auditor is not interested anymore so much in your documents as much he or she will be interested in actually real activities in your company. So what exactly are you, how are you performing all the security activities within your company? So just to give an example, so let's say that you have written a backup policy, okay, And in the backup policy, you have written that you will perform the backup for a particular system, let's say every, I don't know, 6 hours, okay? Now, the auditor, of course, he will read your backup policy because of stage 1, and then in stage 2, he's going to actually ask your, let's say, system administrator and tell him, please show me the log of your backup system, and then he will see through these logs how often the backup is being done. Okay, and if your company is doing the backup, let's say every 24 hours and not every 6 hours, then you will get a nonconformity because you are not complying with your own document. Okay, now the auditor will do this for each and every document that you have written, and basically he will talk to almost any employee in your company, ranging from, you know, top level management all the way to I would say most of the employees or many employees in your scope. And by the way, this is you know, why the audit actually costs, the more people you have in the scope, the audit costs more, because there will be many more audit days needed. For example, for a small company of, I don't know, 10 employees or so, the auditor will have to spend 7 man days or something like this, but roughly 7 man days for doing the stage 1 and stage 2 audit. Whereas for a company of, I don't know, 500 employees, it's a couple of dozen man days. So from this, you can actually see that the larger your company is, the more time the auditor will spend. Why? Because the auditor will have to spend more time speaking to your employees. Okay, very well. Good. Now let's move on to the yeah. So the question now is really what does this mean, and why is this important that the auditor will be actually looking at your activity? So it means a couple of things. First of all, you have to write the documents that make sense. Okay. So you shouldn't be writing in your backup policy that you will do the backup every 6 hours if, you know, you can actually do it every 24 hours, because the standard doesn't specify how often you need to do the backup, right? So it's up to you to decide how often it needs to be done. And of course, you will define the frequency of your backup based on the risk assessment that you have to do it during your implementation, and based on the requirements of, you know, interested parties, you know, like laws, regulations, your clients, and so on. So it's very, very important that these documents are really written in a way that does make sense for your company. And the second thing, also as important, is that all the employees within your company must have a clear idea on what is required of them. So this means that they have to, you know, read all of these documents, all of these policies and procedures, and really you have to make sure that they are complying with all of them. So all of these things are really crucial for you to have a successful certification. And we'll share now with you a link to an article, how to get ISO 27000 certified, where you will get a little bit more details around this process of certification. Okay, good. In the next slide, I'll explain, you know, what happens if you have these nonconformities. If you have this, let's say, if the auditor raises nonconformities, but let's say that you have got only minor nonconformities. Okay, let me now explain the difference between major and minor. So when the certification auditor does the audit, he or she will raise minor nonconformities and potentially major nonconformities. Minor nonconformities means that he found only, let's say, smaller problems with your ISMS, Information Security Management System, or BCMS, Business Continuity Management System. And that these are not, let's say, some critical things. And if you get only minor nonconformities during the certification audit, this means that you will get actually the certificate, and you will also get typically 12 months to close all of these minor nonconformities. On the other hand, if the auditor finds something big, something crucial, then he will raise the major nonconformity. And in this case, your company will not be able to go for the certification. Actually, the auditor will give you a certain timeline actually to resolve this major nonconformity, and then you will be able to move on with the certification. So At the end of the stage 2, you will actually see how many minor nonconformities you have. Typically, you will always get some minor nonconformities, and you will see if you have any major. If you have any major, this means that you have to resolve these major nonconformities before you are actually eligible for certification to get the certificate. Now, once you get certified, then you actually go for this stage 3 audit, and this is basically surveillance visits. Now, why is there this stage 3 if you already got the certificate? The purpose of this stage 3 or surveillance visits is that the certification auditor ensures or checks if you are maintaining your management system, your ISMS or your BCMS, because the certificate is valid for 3 years. Okay. And you know, if you're simply not maintaining your ISMS, if you're not maintaining your security, then you will have you know, the secure certificate which is not really implemented in practice. So this is why the auditor needs to do these surveillance audits. Now, the surveillance audits are done at least once a year. So let's say that your company goes for the certification, let's say, I don't know, February 2025, okay? Then if you get the certificate, the certificate will be valid until February 2028, okay? Now, the first surveillance audit needs to happen in February 2026, and the second, the surveillance audit needs to happen in February 2027. And then in February 2028, your certificate expires, and then you can decide whether to recertify your company or simply let this certificate and expire. So this is something that you can decide once you actually reach the end of your certification period. But during certification, it's mandatory actually to go through these surveillance audits. And these surveillance visits or surveillance audits are basically very similar to stage 2 audit, but they're shorter, right? And it's something that is done let's say if the stage 2 audit is, I don't know, 5 days, then a surveillance visit is usually around 2 or 3 days. Okay, so it's shorter. Good. Now let's move on to the next slide, and this is how to deal with nonconformity. So basically, a nonconformity is well, a definition is failure to comply with the requirements. So as I mentioned earlier, let's say that you had a backup policy that says that you have to perform the backup every 6 hours and you perform the backup every 24 hours. This is a nonconformity because you failed to meet the requirements from your own policy. Another, let's say, nonconformity could be that you did not write the statement of applicability, which is mandatory document according to 27001. This would also be a nonconformity. So basically, the nonconformity can be against the standards, but also nonconformity can be against your own documentation. Now, what do you think? Does usually a certification auditor find more nonconformities against the standard or more nonconformities against your own documentation? And the answer is, funnily, you know, against your own documentation. So it's usually the ratio is usually around 90 to 10. So usually 9 out of 10 nonconformities are against your own documentation, and only 10% are against the standard itself. And it's a kind of absurd, right? Because in the documentation, you're setting your own rules. So the question is, you know, why are you setting the rules in your own documentation which you are not following afterwards? And this is a crucial point here. Again, my point is, you know, when you write these documents, write only the things that make sense for your company. Do not write something that that is not really appropriate, I would say, for your company. Okay, now how are the nonconformities documented? You get a report, audit report, and in the audit report, at the end of the audit, you will get listed all the nonconformities, specifying exactly, you know, what was not done properly. Okay, I already explained the differences between major and minor. Let me give you a couple of examples on what could be a major, what could be a minor. So let's say that if you really didn't write the statement of applicability document, this would be a major nonconformity because you're missing a crucial element of your ISMS. So this is a major. However, if you did write a statement of applicability, but you didn't really properly filled out every piece of this document, then this would be a minor nonconformity, because it's not something that you're not missing the whole element, you're simply maybe missing a part of it. Also, when it comes to this, let's say, example with the backup, if you continuously do the backup every 24 hours instead of every 6 hours, this would be a major nonconformity, because you're continuously breaking your own rule. Whereas if you're doing the backup only every now and then, every 24 hours, but regularly you're really doing the every 6 hours, this would be a minor nonconformity, because you're not complying, let's say, only occasionally, but whereas in majority of cases you are complying with your own policy. Okay, now, what if a major nonconformity is raised? As already explained, you will not be able to go for the, you will not be able to get a certificate right away. You will actually be able to get it only after you resolve this major nonconformity. So, even though it's pretty, I would say, embarrassing to get a major nonconformity, it's actually not such a, a tragic thing, because what you'll have to do is simply send a proof to the auditor that you closed this major nonconformity, and then afterwards you will get ultimately the certificate. So it only, in reality, this only delays your certification, but other than that, it doesn't have to be, need to have any major consequences. Good. Now, what to expect from certification auditors? What actually they will be doing, and how they will be doing this? Basically, they're first of all, their job is really to collect evidence, to find evidence that you're compliant. And there are three types of evidence that the auditors will be looking for. And in many cases, people think that the auditors are only looking for documents for records. And this is true. I mean, they are looking for documents and records, but this is not the only thing that they are looking for. Besides documents and records, the auditors will also be looking for they will be doing these personal observations. So basically, they will be walking around your facilities and finding evidence. For example, let's say that you installed some CCTV cameras around your offices or around your facilities. The best way for an auditor to check out how they work is really to walk through your offices and see how these cameras are positioned and so on. So this is something that can be done, not can be done, but this is something that auditor normally does as part of the audit. These personal observations are also a proof in itself. But the most important proof are interviews with your employees. Why? Because it's one thing to go through, I don't know, all of the documents and records as an auditor, but it's much more important what actually people are saying and how they behave and what they think should be done or shouldn't be done. For example, let's say that a company has this rule on, I don't know, how they need to, let's say, log off their workstations when they leave their desks. And it's very hard to check this out because there are usually no logs around it. The best way is really to interview people and ask them, okay, once you actually get up and take a walk or let's say take a lunch break, what do you do with your computer? And then you actually uncover many things that are not visible through documents or records. And this is how the auditor actually gets a much better, much more complete picture of what is being done in a company. Or another example when these interviews are important is when you have several people included in a certain process. So let's say that you have, I don't know, several software developers in a company, and that there is a certain way that your company is basically ensuring that you are coding, developing the software in a secure way. Then the auditor can actually ask to each of these software developers and basically, ask them, how each and every developer is interpreting these rules and what exactly is he or she doing to implement this. And, this is a way to get a much concrete picture of the security in a company when you as an auditor actually speak to many people. So the point being here is that you have to be prepared that the auditor will want to speak not only with your security officer or, I don't know, someone from the security team, but probably with each and every employee from the IT department, and probably with many people from other departments which are included in the scope, including the senior management. So they will also ask senior management on how they perform things. Okay, good. Now, I'll show you now how you can actually prepare for all of these auditors' questions. So I'll show you now the a tool actually that you can use. So let me just switch the screen. Just give me a second, please. Okay, I'm showing now the tool that is called 𝗥𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀𝗁. This is AI-powered knowledge base developed by 𝘂𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀. And here you can actually ask any questions, you know, around the standard. So let's say you have, I don't know, what are the steps in the implementation, right? And then let's see what it answers. Okay, that already suggests you the question here. It gives you all the, you know, questions here. But more interesting from the audit point of view is you can actually ask the 𝗥𝗲𝗴𝗶𝘀 what kind of proof the auditor will be looking for. So let's say the question, what will the auditor ask regarding backup? Okay. And then it gives you the answer. So the auditor will be looking for this and this and this. And you can actually use this, you can actually go in further and get these answers clause by clause. So you can click this option, explore by clause, and then what evidence will the auditor will be looking for, and then you can go, let's say, for controls, I don't know, organizational controls, and then you will see the list of all the controls, and for each and every one of them you can ask, you know, what will the auditor be looking for. So I click this one, 5.7, and it gives you, you know, the answer. So anyway, you can use this, you can actually sign up for a free trial of this tool, and so you'll get now the link through the chat, so you can start playing around it and, you know, get additional help when you're preparing for the certification audit. Okay, so you can see now the link in the chat. Okay, very well. Now let's move on to the next point. Now the question is also what the auditor can and cannot do during an audit. So the most important thing is that, as I mentioned, you know, the auditor can really talk to anyone. The auditor can go to any, let's say, office which is part of your scope. The auditor can, you know, take a look at any of your systems which are part of your scope. The auditor will never actually log into by him or herself into any system. He will always ask, you know, for someone else to show the screen, to share the screen. But again, you know, he has the right to of insight into any of these things which are part of your scope. Now, what the auditor does not have the right to, he does not have the right to raise a nonconformity if there is no, if there are no two basic elements which are important. The first basic element is that there is a clear requirement. Okay, if let's say that you are going for a certification against 22301 business continuity standard, and let's say that you have a primary location and a secondary location which are, let's say, I don't know, 10 kilometers apart, right? Now, an auditor cannot raise a nonconformity because he thinks the distance is too short, because the standard doesn't specify the you know, the distance between the primary and the secondary location. There is no such thing. If an auditor thinks that you know, it might be actually that the greater distance would be much more in order, he cannot raise a nonconformity. He can put it only as an observation, and observation is not mandatory for you to implement. It's only something that you know, you take it as a comment and potential something that you can potentially improve. Now, on the other hand, if your own, let's say, business continuity policy says that the secondary location has to be 30 kilometers away, then this would be a nonconformity again against your own document. So anyway, the first element that needs to exist in order for auditor to raise a nonconformity is that there is a clear requirement. The second element is that there needs to be a clear proof, right? So if, let's say, the auditor thinks that, for example, let's say for 27001, that segregation of duties is not done properly, there is this control in ISO 27001, but he does not have a proof, then he cannot raise a nonconformity. Okay, he needs to have a concrete proof that you are not that you didn't really implement this segregation of duties, because otherwise it's only guessing. Okay, so the main thing that the auditor cannot do, he cannot raise a nonconformity if there are no two key ingredients. One is that there is a clear requirement, and then the other one is that there is a clear proof. Why is this important? This is important because there might be situations where you actually disagree with the decision of an auditor to raise a nonconformity. And then you have to think in these two terms. Is there a requirement, and is there a clear proof of nonconformity? Because if there is no any of these I would say ingredients, then you can really challenge the auditor and say, look, but you're raising a nonconformity that we don't have enough distance between primary and secondary location, but there is no requirement. So why are we raising this? Can you please show me in the standard where it says that this is required? Okay. Good. Okay. Now, also what you have to keep in mind is that the auditor is here to audit. He's not here to actually consult your company. So if there is something wrong in your company, of course he will raise a nonconformity, or he will raise an observation. But you know, he is not here to spend, I don't know, a couple of hours explaining you how to fix it, because he is not here as a consultant. And by the way, if he were, I mean, if he cannot do the consulting because this is something that would put the auditor in a conflict of interest. So you cannot expect the auditor really to consult you on how to fix things. And basically this is an important thing, because this is the last bullet that in this slide that I wanted to explain you, and this is the mindset of an auditor. Now, if you're trying to, let's say, avoid showing the truth to the auditor, so let's say the auditor is asking you something, and you know, you're kind of avoiding the answer, or hiding some evidence, or not you know, willing to tell the you know, everything that is happening, the auditor will, you know, sense it right away, because usually these are very experienced people, and they will know right away that you're, you know, hiding things from the auditor, and he certainly will not like it. Okay. On the other hand, if you are very open and you basically tell exactly as the things are in the company, then the auditor will sense your, I would say, positive approach. And this is why I mentioned this positive approach in the beginning of the webinar, why it's important. If you have this positive approach, the auditor will, I would say, feel more positively towards your company, because he will see that you have nothing to hide, and that you are basically honest and willing to improve. And then what will happen is that even though the auditor is not allowed to consult you, but basically, you know, there is a gray area between auditing and consulting, and this gray area is where you can, the auditor can actually suggest you a direction in which your solution can take place. So this, let's say, these suggestions are not consulting job. It's not like he will spend a couple of hours, you know, explaining you how to fix the problem, but he might take, I don't know, 5 minutes and explain you how, usually what the best practice is. Okay. So, and by getting this, I would say, these shorter suggestions, which are still not consulting, but are considered, let's say, auditing work, this is something that you will get as additional benefit as of the audit, because the auditor has seen, you know, hundreds of companies like yours, and he knows really what are the best practices on how to fix security or business continuity problems. So again, if you have this positive approach towards the audit, towards the auditor, if you are, let's say, open to this person, then he will also positively look towards your company, and he will be willing to, let's say, go a little bit more into this gray zone of actually providing you with some advice which is not still not considered as consulting. Okay, now what are the key things the auditor will be looking for? So as I mentioned, the auditor will be looking for all the mandatory documentation. And we'll send you now the link to an article which explains what are all the mandatory documents for 27001. So yeah, so here you see the link now in the chat window. Also, the auditor will be looking for if the activities, all of your activities comply with the standard, and the auditor will also be looking for if the activities comply with your own documentation. And again, this last point, that your activities are complying with your own documentation, is usually 90%, so 9 out of 10 non-conformities that are usually found in a company. And this is really where you have to be very, very careful, you know, that again, you're writing the things that make sense in your documents, and also that you are, you know, making sure that everything that your employees understand and comply with all of these documents. Okay. Also, what is yeah. Okay, so also what when are you ready to go for the certification? So basically, it's you have to actually complete a couple of things before you do this. Of course, you have to write all the documents that are mandatory. You also have to, for the ISO 27001, you have to implement all the controls that are listed in the risk treatment plan. So this is something that, this is the plan basically that defines which are all the controls that you are planning to implement. You also have to perform and complete your internal audit. This is also a mandatory step that has to be done before you go for the certification. And we'll also share now the link with you with regards to, this is an article which explains in more detail how this needs to be done. Okay, so let me see. Okay, here you go. So this is the article. And you also have to do the management review. So basically this is a step where the top management reviews everything that is being done in the company, and concludes if there are any, let's say, other activities that need to be done. So any improvements to your whole system, raising the budget, you know, I don't know, introducing some new security objectives, these kind of things. So basically, a couple of steps towards the end of your implementation need to be this internal audit, management reviews, and also what is not mentioned here are these corrective actions. So the improvements that you want to take as part of this internal audit and management review. And also, we'll share now with you the link to this article. It's called ISO 27000 Implementation Guide. So in this article, you will see in what are all the implementation steps and lots of other information around, you know, the resources that you need for the project, the timing that you need, the amount of time that you'll need for the implementation, these kind of things. So all of these things you will see now also through this in this article that we've sent you. Okay, now let me, there is another item at the end. So basically that you really are doing what you have documented. So I'm repeating this all over again, but again, this is the main reason why companies are getting these non-conformities certification audits. So I simply can't tell this enough. You know, you really have to make sure that you follow your own documentation. Now, I'll be showing you now another tool that we developed that helps you with the implementation. And this is 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝘀𝗁. This is the tool that actually helps you go through all the steps in the implementation. So you can see that it lists all the implementation steps. For each of these steps, it provides you with wizards, with document templates that are needed for the implementation of a particular step. It also has this risk register, which speeds up the listing of all the, you know, assets and threats and vulnerabilities, and then calculating the level of risk. So all of this is also included in this 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝘀. And it also has this feature of audit and evidence, and this is basically where it tells you how far did you get with the particular document. So if it is, you know, already approved or it's in progress. and it also gives you progress against certain clauses of the standard. So for example, let's say that you're, I don't know, want to see if you're compliant with the clause 6. It gives you actually all the sub clauses, and it gives you a dashboard of if you're compliant with not or not, and it also gives you more detail. It tells you exactly what you have done or didn't do actually to be compliant with each and every clause. So if you're planning to go for certification, then you can use this kind of tool. You can also, of course, there are many other competitive tools in the market which do, I would say, similar things. So it's something that can be quite useful for helping you to speed up your implementation. You can sign up for a free trial for Conformio, and you can test all of these features yourself. So we'll send you now the link to this page where you can sign up for a free trial. Okay, very well. Now let me move on with the next slide. Now it's the slide around these challenges, and actually I did a poll, a LinkedIn poll, where I asked what people are afraid, what are the biggest challenges they see when they go for certification. Let me share actually this poll. So the question was, what do you see as the most significant challenges to companies going for a 27,000 certification? Actually, the biggest challenge was that employees do not follow the rules. This was answered by 37% of the people who answered the poll. The second the biggest challenge was evidence required by the auditor, 26%, then documentation is not ready, 24%, and the criteria that the auditor will use, 13%. So as you can see, there are different types of, let's say, challenges that people see, but the the biggest one is employees will not follow the rules, which comes back basically to my main point, and this is that very often people are simply not complying with what you have written in documents, and I already explained what you have to do. Now, when it comes to evidence required by the auditor, this is more or less the same as the major issue. So if you are really complying with everything that you have written in your own documents, then it's pretty easy to show the evidence, because if you do not have a written evidence, then you can simply during the interview, you can explain verbally on how you're doing this, and this will be an equally accepted evidence as if this was written evidence. So again, as long as you're following, as long as your employees are following all the security rules, the evidence is kind of self-explanatory, so to say, because the auditor will be able actually to get this evidence either through I don't know, written records or through personal observation or through interviews. Okay, documentation is not ready. Yeah, for this purpose, I mean, you already got this link with the list of mandatory documents, and using tools like this Conformio or something else will help you, make sure that you're not missing any of these. Criteria the auditor will use, basically the criteria is what you have written again in your documents. The auditor cannot ask you something that is not within your documents. He cannot ask for something that is good practice, because this is not a requirement. Okay, and this is why it's important to keep in mind that the auditor can raise a nonconformity only if there is a clear requirement and if there is a clear evidence that you're not complying with this requirement. Okay, going back to my presentation, some other challenges that I received through email from you, and thank you for sending these emails, and I've tried to list the most important challenges here. So tons of work, either technical or organizational, procedural. So you will, okay, this is a common, let's say, challenge for companies. They think that they will suddenly get a whole new work to be done, lots of things that they did not have to do before, and so on. And yes, this will happen if you are writing documents that do not make sense. Again, if you're introducing a new backup policy and you're saying that you will do the backup every 6 hours, whereas it doesn't have to be so, of course you will have additional work. But why would you have this kind of work, right? So coming back to the main point today is really don't write documents that make no sense. Because if you're writing documents only that do make sense, then it's not going to create so much an overhead for you. Now, to be honest, there are some documents which you would not have, like, okay, risk assessment or statement of applicability, these kind of things. And admit there are these, I would say, additional documents, but they're not even close to what many people think. And these are only, I would say, less than 10 documents that you would normally not need without 27001. But these documents are certainly not, I don't know, 50% of extra work on what you are currently doing. There might be, I don't know, a couple of percentage of extra work on top of what you're currently doing, but certainly not a huge overhead. So the point being here is, try to scale these documents, try to adapt them to what you already have in a company, to your existing technologies, existing processes, and of course you have to always keep in mind the risks. I mean, I've seen some companies that never use antiviruses, okay? So in this case, yes, you will have to do an additional effort of introducing these kind of security controls, but I mean, come on. If you're not using antivirus at all, then certainly it's something that was missing from your security. And you will see that once you start thinking in this way, that most of this standard is pretty much common sense. It's not like it introduces some bureaucratic things that make no sense. Most of this is I would say very, very, very much common sense. Okay, another challenge was have as much possible common documentation and processes so that things are not duplicated. Yeah, so if you're implementing a couple of standards, you should always try to integrate them. So for example, between 27001 and 22301, there are many documents that can be used together. For example, I don't know, internal audit or document control, these kind of things. So whenever you can, you should use these documents in common. And of course, if you already have some documents from before, if you already had a backup policy before you started with 27001, you don't have to create another one. You don't have to create a completely new one. By all means, you should use your existing documents, adapt it if needed. But again, don't create paperwork that makes no sense. Okay, challenge how the employees will respond to auditors' inquisitive questions during a possible interview. Well, if they're prepared, if they're completely aware of all the documents that are needed, then they can't tell anything wrong. So it's really about training and awareness, and how you're actually yeah, exactly like this, preparing the employees for these documents, for these new rules. And if they're trained, if they are aware, then basically this means that they are complying with all the documents, and then in this case there's almost nothing wrong that they can tell to the auditor. And we'll send you now the link to this product of ours. Is called Company Training Academy for ISO 27001. So you'll be able actually to train all of your employees and raise this cybersecurity awareness, and you will see it's something that can be done for your whole workforce. So it's not the training only for a couple of people. This is something that can be done for many people in the company. Okay, good. Now, not knowing everything that we should be doing to maintain our certification. Again, it's not something hypothetical, it's what is written in your documents. You have to perform the backup according to your backup policy. You have to configure your IT systems according to your documents for configuration. You have to develop the software in a way that your secure development policy, or however you're calling it, is written. So basically you have to do security on a daily basis according to what your own rules are saying about it. Okay, if our internal audits will match an auditor expectations, so the best is really to read this article around internal audit that I've sent you previously. There is also this internal auditor course on our website. We'll send you now the link to this internal auditor course. It's a free course. You can go through the whole course if you want without payment. We are charging only for the exam. So if you're not going for the exam, then you can go for the whole course. You will see now the link to this internal auditor course in the chat. Good. Now let me conclude here. So the certification is going to be pretty, I would say, straightforward if you prepare properly, not only the documentation, but again, if your employees understand and comply with these documents. And of course, you can use 𝘧𝗿 as tools for that purpose, including Conformio. And we'll also send you now the meeting link to schedule a call with our Conformio expert, and he will show you, how Conformio works. But you can also ask him to show you these other products that I mentioned. Good. Okay, so now let's move on to the Q&A session. And I'll start answering these questions in a second, and feel free to ask your questions through chat window. So ask anything that you are interested in, and I'll answer all of these questions. And before I start answering these questions, just a couple of notes. Feel free to reach out to me directly and ask any question. And here's my email. I'll send you now this email through the chat window, also show on the screen. So you can use this email to contact me directly if you have any questions, and yeah, you can simply send it directly to me. Okay, let me just write it here. Okay, good. Now. Second thing is you can follow me on my LinkedIn profile, on my YouTube profile. So I post regularly on LinkedIn the most interesting cybersecurity articles I find on the internet. So whenever I find something interesting on cybersecurity governance or cybersecurity, how to manage people and these kind of things, I'm posting this on LinkedIn. So if you want, you can follow me on LinkedIn. And on YouTube I publish quite many videos on ISO 27001 and also around some other cybersecurity standards. So if you prefer to watch some videos, you can actually take a look at my LinkedIn profile. And yeah, we'll send you now these links to these profiles so that you can open them and follow me there. And a final thing I wanted to tell you is that my next webinar will be on what is the CISO's, so security officer's role in ISMS maintenance. So what are the activities that need to be done for ISMS maintenance? And this webinar will be next Wednesday, and you will also now see these links on these webinars. So let me just show you this. Yeah, so you will see the upcoming webinars now also in the chat window. Good. Now let me see. Yeah, there are many questions coming in. Yeah, it's basically 2 minutes up to the full hour, so it will take me something like 10 minutes for answering all of these questions. If you have time, feel free to stay in the call, and I'll try to answer all of these questions that came in. Okay, so I'll go first through the questions I received before the webinar. So Hussein was asking, is it necessary to have IT qualified person for preparing documents for ISO 27001? The answer is no. You can actually have someone who has an average knowledge of IT, but also has the knowledge of the business size of the company. And if you have such a person, then it's completely enough to have someone who is not I would say IT focused, especially if you're using some templates or some tool like Conformio. Okay, Saqib was asking, companies already compliant with ISO 27001 or NIST cybersecurity framework, how can they quickly implement and comply with ISO 22301? There is actually a separate webinar that I do on how to integrate 27001 and 22301, or how to implement them together. And now we'll send you this link to this other webinar, and then you can take a look at how this can be done. So if you already implemented one standard, how to simply add another. Okay, Glenard was asking, are international accreditation bodies aware of and are preparing to certify companies that have prepared for certification using Conformio ISO 27001 methodology? So basically, accreditation bodies are not, I would say, focused on the software solutions that any company is using. So it's not only question of Conformio. There are dozens and dozens of solutions out there. Basically, the accreditation bodies are not really interested in what the companies are using, which kind of software, they're first of all, accreditation bodies are interested in licensing or accrediting the certification bodies. Now, if the question is around certification bodies, basically certification bodies focus on evidence. So it's, I would say, rather easy to write a document in Conformio, but it's much harder to actually comply with this document on a daily basis, let's say, for doing the backup. And you know, it's not really about how this tool can create a document, it's really about what you actually do in practice. So my point here is being that for certification bodies, the main, I would say, outcome, the security activities are what counts. It's not so important on how you actually define these documents and where you write them. So the certification auditors have a different focus. They don't care, you know, how you created the documents. It's much more important for them if you comply with these documents. Okay, Hilal was asking, what is the ideal report format for business continuity plan in industrial companies? So there is no predefined, let's say, format of a business continuity plan. By the way, business continuity plan is not required for 27001, it's required for 22301. But actually, I'll share now with you a video that I very recently posted on YouTube. It's around a business continuity plan. I don't have it here. Anyway, if you go for my YouTube profile and if you go for take a look at the latest published videos, you will notice that there is one video which explains the business continuity plan, how the business continuity plan needs to be written. It is about NIS2. So NIS2 is a European regulation directive around cybersecurity, but basically the structure of this business continuity plan displayed in this video is practically the same for ISO 27001, ISO 22301, or any of these. So simply go for my YouTube profile and you'll see that this video is one of the last published. I actually published this video around business continuity plan last Thursday, so it should be a rather recent one. Okay, Sultan was asking, is ISO 27001 applicable to industrial control systems? The answer is yes. So ISO 27001 is focused on protecting the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of any system, including the industrial control systems or operational technology, or let's say regular IT systems that you have in your own company, or IT systems in the cloud. So any of these or IoT, so everything is covered. ISO 27001 is let's say its concept is such that it covers all of these types of digital systems. Edwin was asking, is ISO 22301 BCMS a requirement in ISO 27001? The answer is no. So if you want to go for if you want to implement ISO 27001 and certify against this standard, you do not need ISO 22301. So this is not required. Dominic was asking, we are having sites in multiple European countries. Do we have to certify once or country by country? So you can go either way. You can go for the whole scope, covering all of your offices throughout all of your countries, or you can go country by country. It really depends on, this is I would say primarily a business decision. Typically, if you're a larger company with many employees, many locations, it's easier, it's quicker, it's cheaper actually to go one location at a time. Because you implement the standard and certify in one location, you learn how this is done, and then it's much more easier for you. You can much more easily, let's say, replicate this knowledge and know-how to all the other locations. But of course, if you want to go right away for all the locations, this is also an option. Okay, Zdenka was asking, how can a freelancer consulting business integrate ISO 27001 in their business? So basically you have to follow these steps that there was one link sent during the webinar around what are the steps needed to implement the standard. You have to implement these steps, and basically these are the steps that are I would say the same for any company, large or small. So simply open this article. It's called ISO 27001 Guide, Implementation Guide, and you will see all the necessary steps there. Okay, so these were questions before the webinar. Now let me see the questions during the webinar. Evelyn is asking, are all employees supposed to be at the office when the auditor is there? A part of them is usually doing home office. No, so you don't need to have all the employees in the office when you have the audit, especially if this is not a normal working environment for these employees. But this is something that you have to arrange with the auditor before the auditor comes to the audit. So basically you have to tell the auditor, look, I don't know, out of our, 50 employees, 20 are working in the office, another 10 are working in another office, and the remaining 20 are working remotely from home. So this is something that you have to clearly specify before the audit starts. Okay, I think I answered this one. Prem is asking, if you are already certified for 2013 and migrating to 2022 revision of the standard, will we need to prepare new documents from scratch or update old documents? Definitely update old documents. You definitely should not, go for write any new documents because this change from the old to the new revision is rather a short one. And it's not something that requires you to change drastically your documentation. And there is another webinar which I delivered on how to make this transition. We'll send you now this link to this other webinar called how to make the transition from 2013 to 2022 revision. Okay, good. Okay, and a question from Jim. If the company operates in multiple jurisdictions but use centralized cloud IT and common policies, will you be required to certify all countries at the same time, or they all use the same infrastructure and common systems? So this is really the question of scoping your ISMS and making sure that you have this clear scope on what is included in your scope and what is excluded from your scope. Again, typically for larger organizations which operate in multiple countries, which have company offices, several company offices in different countries, typically it is possible to separate these, let's say, other countries and put them out of the scope, and that you include in the scope only, let's say, one country. This is typically possible. And this is something that you actually can do. We'll send you now also the link to an article which speaks about ISMS scope. So how do you set the ISMS scope? And you'll see the link in a second in this chat window. And you'll be able to learn more a bit, on how to handle this kind of situation. Okay. A question from Thomas, how to share, here's the article for the ISMS scope. A question from Thomas, how to share documents with the auditor. We store them in SharePoint. Basically, the auditor will tell you what he or she prefers. So you might actually share the access to your existing SharePoint. You might upload your documents to the auditor, to certification body system. You might send them through email. So it's I would say whatever. It's not, this method of delivery of the documents is not as important. It's something that you have to agree with the auditor. Of course, if you're using Conformio, you can simply give them the access to Conformio. They will be able to see the documents in Conformio. Sonia is asking, is there any differences between implementation in different countries? This depends on, I would say, two things. First one is if there is a local legislation, if the local legislation is different. So for example, let's say that you have two offices of your company. One is in, let's say, Germany, European Union, and the other one is in United States. The privacy laws in United States and Germany are different, and therefore your ISMS will be different, at least from the perspective of the protection of personal data. Okay. Now the second, let's say, factor that will influence the difference is around your clients. Let's say that you have these two offices, but they have their own clients, right? The US office has US clients and, let's say, Canadian clients, and the German office handles the whole Europe. Now, these companies in Europe might have a different security requirements towards the company versus what the North American clients have. And because of these different requirements, you actually might have different security rules within these two offices. Good. Okay, I don't see any more questions, so I hope that I answered all of your questions. Let me just check. Yeah, I think quite many questions, but I think I answered all of them. Good. Now, so let's wrap up the webinar. So just a couple of words before I finish. So as I mentioned, this webinar today was intended really to give you an overview of the certification process and not really to go into details of, you know, the implementation of all these controls and clauses. But to learn more about the standard, you can sign up for Conformio, also for 𝗥𝗲𝗴𝗶 from our website, and we'll also send you the links through email if you signed up through Advisor website for this webinar. We'll publish the PDF presentation deck together with all the links from today's webinar. And if you signed up through the Advisor website, we'll send you all of these, I mean the presentation deck and the links through email. If you are watching this webinar through LinkedIn or through YouTube, then we will publish these at actually in the comment section of the page where you are watching this webinar now. And we'll do this in, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes. So if you can, simply stay on this page, again, for LinkedIn and for YouTube, just stay on the page where you're watching this webinar now, and you'll see all of these links and the PDF presentation deck in about, again, 5, maybe 10 minutes from now. Okay, and finally, we'll send you the link to our short survey, and it's really short, so if you have time, please do spend a minute to fill it out, only 3 questions. And it's really crucial for us to get a feedback on how we are doing with these webinars. And this would be all. Thank you very much for your participation, and I hope you have enjoyed this webinar. Have a nice day.